book is that? A roll of arms, sir. Looking for the fiddler? You won't find him. They don't put hedge knights in those roles. Just lords and champions. Sir Duncan the Tall, an egg. A knight of the Seven Kingdoms. The Mystery Knight. The three-headed dragon banner of House Targaryen is an iconic part of the lore of Westeros and the history of George R. R. Martin's world, up there with the likes of the Stark direwolf banner and the lion of the Lannisters. But what I find most fascinating about the heraldry in Westeros is that this iconic dragon banner of House Targaryen is in fact very recent. Most houses, especially the larger and more powerful, have had their banners sometimes for thousands of years, given how deeply embedded heraldry is into Westerosi culture. Yet, the Targaryen dragon, by comparison, is very recent, despite the fact that House Targaryen as a house is likely just as old as some of these ancient Westerosi houses. The big difference is, House Targaryen is inherently Valyrian, and the houses of Old Valyria didn't use heraldic iconography. Thus, when House Targaryen moved to Dragonstone prior to the Doom of Valyria, no banner or arms of their own, and for the most part, in the centuries after, didn't really have need of one. They controlled most of Blackwater Bay, but did not really interact directly with mainland Westeros that much as far as we know. Their focus seemed to still be towards the east and the Free Cities, the Three Daughters, and the smoking remains of the Valyrian Empire. They kind of very much kept themselves to themselves on Dragonstone. But of course all that would change with Aegon the Conqueror. While on paper the actual conquest of Westeros was very straightforward, what came after it certainly was not. Aegon and his sisters needed to bring together these 7 quarrelsome kingdoms who for thousands of years not only had been culturally distinct, but warred on and off with each other, causing generational resentment and rivalries between them. So what Aegon did at the very start of the conquest is appeal to some of the cultural aspects of the kingdoms in which they share common ground, in terms of culture and tradition, while converting to the Faith of the Seven and working directly with the Maesters and the Faith to learn more about his new realm, were tangibly the most impactful things Aegon did to make House Targaryen more Westerosi. He also introduced the now iconic three-headed red dragon on a black field coat of arms, sending a message to the people of Westeros that he was not just some foreign invader coming to change the culture and traditions of the realm, but he was now truly one of them. The original Targaryen banner was first used in the direct aftermath of Aegon's initial invasion at the landing site that would become King's Landing, when he was crowned by his sisters and queens, Visenya and Rhaenys, at the temporary Aegon fort, being proclaimed king of the whole of Westeros as a statement of intent. Like most of the banners of the great houses in Westeros, House Targaryens sends a message about who the house is and their history. Thus, given their Valyrian heritage and being the last dragon riders, using dragons on their banner like this makes a lot of sense. Now, while it is of course remembered as Aegon's conquest, given he was the figurehead and king, it was just as much Rhaenys' and Visenya's as well. They played vital roles not just in the battles of the conquest, but also finding peaceful solutions. There's a reason why history remembers Aegon, Visenya and Rhaenys as the 3 heads of the dragon, because it was through the 3 of them the House Targaryen as we know it today exists. Aegon very much could have just had a single-headed dragon on the banner, given he was of course the king and head of the house, but I think it really goes to show how much he valued and respected both of his sisters and their contribution to what became the conquest, that all 3 are represented on the banner. Now, as to the colours of the banner, red and black, we don't actually know for certain in lore why those colours were chosen, but my personal interpretation is that it fits with the Targaryen house motto of fire and blood, the red of the dragon representing blood, and the black background, fire. But fire is orange, I hear you say. Well, yes it is. But I'm not talking about a normal fire, but dragon fire. Specifically, the dragon fire of one dragon in particular, Balerion the Black Dread, whose flames were famously black. You Westerosi are all the same. You sew some beast upon a scrap of silk, and suddenly you are all lions or dragons or eagles. Magister Ilario Mopatis to Tyrion Lannister, A Dance with Dragons Chapter 1, Tyrion 1. The Targaryen banner, as far as we can tell, stayed fairly consistent for most of the rule of Targaryen Westeros, with a few exceptions: war, personal banners, and bastardy. The first variations of the Targaryen banner we see is during the Dance of the Dragons, where both Aegon II and Rhaenyra use their own personal arms rather than the normal Targaryen one. The issue is, this was a civil war, with both the Blacks and the Greens claiming to be the legitimate heirs of King Viserys I. Frankly, it just makes a lot of sense for both sides to use their own personal banners on the battlefield, or the battlefield would have got mightily confusing very quickly. A misconception is that these banners were created because of the Dance of the Dragons, but the truth is, we know at the very least Aegon's existed well prior to it, and it's likely Rhaenyra's did in some capacity as well. In real-world history, it was very common for individual members of royal houses to have their own personal heraldry alongside their house's heraldry. It was usually some kind of variation on it. So it just made sense to use Aegon and Rhaenyra's personal heraldry as faction banners during the Civil War, rather than both sides try and use the traditional Targaryen banner. The use of personal banners on the battlefield would also have been consistent, regardless of the civil war or not. Normally you'd have a single general or king leading the whole army, then people below them, often the most trusted lords, commanding different sections of the army. We see this in the main books with the War of the Five Kings among the bannermen of Robb Stark. The lords leading different sections of the army will fly their own house banner or personal banner, so the person in charge of leading the battle knows who is who and where everyone is. It helps to make commanding each element of your army easier, with less chance of confusion and miscommunication. The banner used by Aegon II was the normal Targaryen banner, but the dragon was golden rather than red, as a nod to Aegon's dragon, Sunfyre, who was often known as Sunfyre the Golden. Rhaenyra took a different approach with her personal sigil, using a quartered banner. Two of the quadrants of it were the standard Targaryen heraldry, the three-headed red dragon on black. Another quarter was the moon and falcon sigil of House Arryn, in honour of her late mother, Aemma Arryn. The final quarter was the silver seahorse of House Velaryon on green. This is speculated to be for her late husband, Laenor Velaryon, the supposed father of her three eldest sons. It should also be noted that House Velaryon were generally major supporters of Rhaenyra. After the Dance of the Dragons, the standard heraldry of House Targaryen was brought back for use as the primary heraldry. I know it's only a minor thing, but I really do dislike how they changed Aegon II's heraldry in House of the Dragon to a green background with a gold dragon, but more so how they just had Rhaenyra use the normal Targaryen banner rather than her own heraldry. Now, something I think doesn't come across too well in the books, and that I only caught on a reread, is just like in the real world, personal banners do seem to be quite common in Westeros. It appears not every house has loads of them, but some like House Targaryen, House Baratheon and House Lannister, House Frey all seem to have quite a few. Other than the easy identification on the battlefield, personal heraldry was used in various ways, for the seals on letters, for simple decorations in a castle, in tourneys on clothing, and they often seem to be used by heirs and quite a few younger sons to differentiate themselves from their siblings. In the real world, a lot of kings still even use their own personal heraldry alongside that of their own house, but for the little lore we have, this does not seem to be the case for House Targaryen. Now, as we go through the known Targaryen personal heraldry, I must make it clear this is only the known heraldry. I think it's very, very likely there are a lot more personal banners for members of House Targaryen that we simply do not know about. For whatever reason, they were not worth mentioning in the history books. There are loads of really interesting and important members of House Targaryen who I would have expected to have their own personal heraldry, but just don't. For example, the original Rhaenyra Targaryen, the Queen of the West, Rhaegar Targaryen, Daemon Targaryen, Aemon the Dragon Knight, Aemon One-Eye, and so many others. Key standout figures who should have their own identity, and likely did. The same goes for the other houses in Westeros. I would bet there are a few Starks or other houses who too have many personal banners. A personal favourite of mine and a good example would be Brynden Tully, whose nickname is the Blackfish. He thus created his own personal banner, changing the colour of the trout on the Tully banner from silver to black. The rules of heraldry are a good deal more flexible in the Seven Kingdoms than they became in the late Middle Ages in the real world. There are no laws of heraldry per se, no College of Heralds for enforcement, no formal regulations about candidacy and differentiating, so individual knights and lords have certain amounts of freedom to bear what shield they prefer and play around with their house sigils, or not, as the case may be. The words of George R. R. Martin. Most of the known Targaryen personal arms we know about come during the time period between the First and the Third Blackfyre rebellions, and the reason we know about some of these specifically is thanks to the Dunk and Egg novellas. King Maekar Targaryen, while he was still the Prince of Summerhall, used a personal banner consisting of the red three-headed Targaryen dragon on black, which might sound the same as the normal banner, but the difference is Maekar had the dragon quartered. It is commonly believed he chose to quarter the design because he was the fourth son of King Daeron II. Maekar's eldest son, Prince Daeron, had a very simple personal arms. He simply flipped the Targaryen dragon so it was facing to the left. We don't know when or how Daeron came to use his personal arms, or why he chose that design. Some fans theorize the dragon facing the opposite way from the standard dragon symbolizes Daeron's attitude to his position in House Targaryen and not really wanting to be part of any responsibility, in a way turning his back. However, I personally think this idea is a bit reaching. Maekar's second son, Prince Aerion, known better as Aerion Brightflame, uses a personal arms that was a slight adjustment to the normal Targaryen banner. He changed the colours of the dragon heads. The first dragon head is orange, the second red, and the third yellow. At first the choice of colours might seem a bit random, but it seems to link back to his personal style. He frequently wore clothing as bright as fire, often red and yellow and gold. In tourneys, Aerion wore a surcoat woven with a swirling pattern of smoke and fire, and his black helm had a crest of red enamel flames. His lance gold-tipped and painted in stripes of red and orange and yellow. So his twist on the Targaryen arms really fits in with his general look and aesthetic. So while some personal arms may have meaning to them, some like Aerion's are simply being used as a stylistic choice. Prince Valarr Targaryen, the eldest son of Baelor Targaryen, King Maekar's elder brother, used a personal arms that was simply the normal Targaryen banner with a red border around the edge. Unfortunately, we don't really know anything about why he chose this banner, just that at the very least he was using it during the tourney at Ashford Meadow, as seen in the Dunk and Egg novellas. There are some personal arms that come about thanks to bastards simply existing. Many bastards, of course, would not be entitled to use their father's house heraldry, thus many would create personal arms of their own. Even when legitimized, the bastards in question would often just use their house banner but reverse the colours. This seems to be the case with several of the great bastards of King Aegon IV. Aegon the Unworthy. The three most well-known and iconic of these great bastards each had their own personal heraldry. Daemon Blackfyre, formerly Daemon Waters, was a very special case. He wasn't just a normal Targaryen bastard. Yes, his father was King Aegon IV, but his mother was also King Aegon IV's cousin, Princess Daena. Daemon was conceived during the reign of King Baelor the Blessed, when Baelor hid away his three sisters to protect them from his own desire for them, after he became obsessed with the faith, and effectively became a Septon king. Needless to say, then Prince Aegon and Princess Daena had an affair, resulting in the controversial birth of Daemon Waters. So Daemon was a double Targaryen bastard, the only kind of bastard House Targaryen could come up with. Targaryen on both sides, but still illegitimate. When Aegon IV legitimized all of his bastard children on his deathbed, Daemon took the name Blackfyre after the Sword of Kings. His father had, again, controversially gifted him years prior. He reversed the colours of the Targaryen banner, a black three-headed dragon on red, for his new House Blackfyre. Needless to say, that black dragon would define the next century of Westerosi history, with the impact of the Blackfyre rebellions still being felt into the main books. Well, I have to admit, I enjoy heraldry just for its own sake, although I have played fast and loose with some of the real-world heraldic conventions. A lot of bad fantasy takes place in a sort of Disney Middle Ages, and that has no appeal to me. but I did not want to write thousands of pages about mud and lice and plague either. That would just be as false. In the other direction, the real Middle Ages had room for both plague and pageantry, and I wanted both sides in my books as well. Heightened somewhat, since this is fantasy. The words of George R. R. Martin. Aegor Rivers was the bastard son of King Aegon IV and Barbara Bracken, better known by his nickname Bittersteel. He would be one of Daemon Blackfyre's biggest and most loyal supporters, continuing to fight for House Blackfyre even after Daemon's death at the Red Grass Field, effectively leading the 3rd and 4th Blackfyre rebellions with Daemon's remaining sons. He did not give Daemon's eldest surviving son, Daemon II, his support in the 2nd Blackfyre rebellion, and refused to give him the sword Blackfyre. He would in this time also form the famous sellsword company in Essos known as the Golden Company. Aegor would create his own personal heraldry by taking the red stallion on gold banner of House Bracken, his mother's house, and adding a pair of black dragon wings to the stallion to represent his Targaryen heritage and support of House Blackfyre. The bastard son of Melissa Blackwood and Aegon IV, Brendan Rivers, would not just be as loyal to House Targaryen as Bittersteel was to House Blackfyre, but he would become a fierce rival with Aegor, a feud that some believe fueled the Blackfyre rebellions even further. House Bracken and House Blackwood are known to have thousands of years of heated rivalry, but the enmity between Brendan and Aegor went far deeper than simple house allegiances. It is believed they both loved their half-sister Jaehaerys Seastar, and that was the core of their quarrel. Brendan was albino and thus had milk white skin, long white hair and red eyes. On the right side of his face he had a red wine-stained birthmark that extended from his throat up his right cheek. Birthmark was the reason why he was called Bloodraven, as it was said to look somewhat like a raven drawn in blood. Brendan was rumoured to be a sinister sorcerer and a spy master who effectively ruled the kingdom with spies and spells as Lord Bloodraven. A popular riddle asks, how many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes and one. He would even rise to the role of Hand of the King and play vital roles in the Blackfyre rebellions. For me, Brendan Rivers has one of the most standout personal arms in the series. It's effectively the traditional Targaryen dragon with only a single head, and white rather than red, with red eyes and red flame on a black background. It very much visually represents who Bloodraven is. There are some fan theories that claim that Daemon III Blackfyre used the personal banner during the 3rd Blackfyre rebellions, a black dragon on gold. But after having a look at the books, I can't seem to find any suggestion that this is the case. But if Daemon III did have a personal banner, I actually do think it would make sense that it would be this, given it's the black dragon of House Blackfyre, and a reference to his association with Aegor Rivers and the Golden Company with the gold background. Now I quickly want to talk about 3 banners that are not strictly book canon, only appearing in the HBO TV shows, but do make sense in terms of the books somewhat. In House of the Dragon Season 1, we see Daemon using a modified Targaryen heraldry. It's the normal Targaryen arms with a gold border and golden accents along the dragon's back. I really like this detail, and Daemon is definitely a character I could see having personal arms in the books. The heraldry also really makes sense given the time period as well. Daemon would have been commander of the Gold Cloaks, so I assume the gold accents are a reference to that. Now this next one I'm not really convinced is a personal banner, but I think it is still worth mentioning and discussing in the comments. During the first episode of House of the Dragon, during the Great Council scene, at the very start of the episode, some fans have argued that it appears that King Jaehaerys I is using some form of personal arms, a silver dragon on black. I'm not too sure on this one. I think it could just be some set dressing, and I'm not sure why they would create and add a personal arms for King Jaehaerys for this single scene. I'm not even sure what these personal arms could be in reference of. Some argue the silver represents one of Jaehaerys' nicknames, the Old King, the silver dragon reflecting his greyed hair. Others that is a reference to his beloved recently dead wife, Alysanne, given her dragon was Silverwing. To me, both of these ideas really are a reach. Finally, in the HBO shows, there are 2 versions of the Targaryen heraldry used. The incorrect, where the dragon has 4 legs, and the correct two-legged version. It's very odd because, as George R. R. Martin points out in a blog post, for the first few seasons of Game of Thrones, they used the correct two-legged version. That's until Daenerys' fleet sets sail for Westeros, when the dragon now suddenly has 4 legs. Then to make matters worse, House of the Dragon Season 1, trying to be consistent with Game of Thrones, carried on using that wrong version of the sigil. It does seem that House of the Dragon Season 2 did attempt to address this somewhat and had Aegon's personal banner have only 2 legs. Some fans' headcanon for a long time is that the 4-legged version was Daenerys Targaryen's personal arms, and argued that where she'd never actually seen the real Targaryen banner before, when she was having the new banners made, she just assumed it had 4 legs. To me, that idea doesn't really make sense. But what I do know is it certainly annoyed George R. R. Martin enough to make a blog post about it. So that's all the Targaryen arms we currently know about. I suspect there are many more we don't know of, and I do wonder if we will get some new ones in the upcoming A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms TV adaptation, or at the very least some more detail about the ones that already exist.